Okay, the seventh principle that I wanted to share with you is connecting truth with life. So yes, we should not overreact. We should answer the questioner, not the question. We should not lecture, but listen, and don't be afraid to say, I don't know. All of these are great. All of these principles are great. But there is a very important principle, I left it to the end, connecting truth with life. It's very important for servants and for parents as well. My job as a parent and servant is not just to feed the mind of my child with knowledge. It's important. As I mentioned earlier, it's good to speak to their mind as well as their heart. But feeding my child with just knowledge and information only is not healthy, is not what we're in the business in doing. So connecting truth with life is extremely important. If we don't apply the truth of what we know in our daily living, then I am just a search engine in my mind. I am just a walking encyclopedia. So I need to make that connection between truth and life. Having the right answers that don't lead me to better love God and others are meaningless. Yani ya farhati, I have all the right answers. It doesn't mean anything. So connect the mind with the hand, the head with the hand. Truth and life. Look at this verse right here. So there's a bridge between truth, knowledge, and life application. Knowledge and application. What is that verse? Listen to what Christ said in John 13. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. You see? Beautiful verse. If we know these things, blessed are you if you what? Connect that knowledge with application, with life. It is not just knowledge. And I think there's also a verse that says, let us not be hearers of the word, but what? Doers of the word. Okay? That's why there's always a connection between theology and spirituality. Illahutiyat والروحيات. There's a connection. I am not here, my job is not just to develop theologians or people that are very smart and intellectual and they know the Bible well and they know this and they know this. That is not our objective. Let me explain to you 3 things that are connected. And these 3 things, you hear them repeatedly in the gospel, in the scriptures, especially in the book of Proverbs. Knowledge, understanding, and what is the third one? المعرفة, الفهم, what is the third one? اللي هي knowledge, understanding, ما اسمها ايه بقى؟ Wisdom. الثلاثة دول. Knowledge, understanding, wisdom. If you search knowledge, understanding, wisdom in the scriptures, you'll see at least 100 verses. And I'm not exaggerating. معرفة, الفهم, الحكمة. How are they connected? Why are they always connected? Knowledge feeds my mind with knowledge of the truth. If I impart knowledge and I give knowledge, I produce in my child a scholar. عالم. Okay? A scholar. طيب. I take it to another level. Understanding will produce in my child what? It will make him or her what? Not a scholar, but a teacher. Because for you to teach something, you have to understand it. Well, the third and highest level, wisdom will produce not scholars, not teachers, but saints. And that's what we are charged to do as parents and servants, to produce saints, not teachers, not scholars. So what I mean by that is know and understand, but apply. And the application of that which you know is wisdom. بس أي knowledge, not أي knowledge, the knowledge of the truth. مش أي knowledge. ما احنا ممكن, you can go online and you can get all kind of knowledge. But the knowledge of the truth, if you understand the knowledge of the truth and live that knowledge, you are a saint. All right. Theology and spirituality. Here's what Isaiah says in Isaiah 2:3. Many people shall come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob." What will he do? He will teach us his ways, and we shall walk in his paths. That's truth and life. He will teach us so that we can walk. And I'm going to skip this because it's rather lengthy. So there are three, again, this is for servants. If you are preparing a Sunday school lesson, or you're given a sermon, or a speech, or a lecture, or a Bible study, or anything, there are three faculties of the human soul. What are those three faculties? The mind, the heart, and the will. Al-aql, wal-qalb, wal-irada. Okay? And they correspond to your logos, which resides in your mind. That's from which we get logic. It's your logos. What is the other faculty? Ethos. What is ethos? That which you apply, from which we get ethics. And then pathos. Pathos is that which deals with your emotions and your feelings. Ethos, pathos, logos. Mind, heart, will. Mind is the knowledge of the truth. Heart is the seat of your sentiments, your feelings, your emotion. And then your will is what you do, your application. So, if you're given a Sunday school lesson or a lecture or a sermon or a Bible study, you must touch on all three. You must feed the mind with something new. So your child will come out saying, "I learned something new today in the lesson. Aha, I had an aha moment. There is a new piece of information that I learned." That's feeding the mind. What is the other element or faculty that you need to touch on or feed and nourish? The heart. You nourish the mind with information, knowledge. What about the heart? You inspire the heart. You need to hear this from your children after a Sunday school lesson. I was not just informed, but I was also what? Inspired. I was touched in my heart. What is the third component that you need to work on? Is to motivate the will to act. Now that I know with my mind, I'm inspired in my heart, now I need to act upon that which I was inspired with. Do you see how it works? So after every Sunday school lecture or Bible study, you need to think, what is it that I'm teaching them as new piece of information? How am I going to inspire them and touch their heart? And how am I going to motivate them to do that which I want them to do? You answer those three questions, your child will come out with a full course spiritual meal. I'll give you the proof from the scriptures. Everything I say to you is founded upon the scriptures. Let me share with you this verse. The greatest sermon in the book of Acts was the sermon by Saint Peter. Acts chapter 2. Listen to what Saint Peter said. Men of Israel, hear these words. And he goes on to say, I highlighted this in yellow. Therefore, verse 36, therefore let all the house of Israel know assuredly. What is he doing? He's giving them what? Knowledge. I want you to know, اعلموا هذا بالعربي. You should know this assuredly, that God has made this Jesus whom you crucified, both Lord and Christ. Now, when they heard these things, they were what? Cut to the heart. بالعربي نخسوا في قلوبهم. They were what? Inspired, touched, cut through the heart. And listen to what they say next. And said to Peter and the rest of the apostles, men and brethren, what shall we do? What is this? The application. That's the perfect model and template of every sermon, lecture, Sunday school lesson, Bible study that we should adhere to. You see? Know, inspire, motivate. All right. That's what I wanted to share with you. And in summary, this is what I have here for you. And let's now move on to any question on this so far. I don't want to do the question. Okay. Any questions on this quickly, or should we just wait until we do the Q&A later? Any comments? Yes, sir. 1 second. عشان نسمعك.
Thank you.
Sure.
You touched on Sunday school and the servants, but as we are all aware that different age and different levels, there is certain approach.
Of course.
And communication.
Of course.
But in order to do that, you have to educate your servants first, how to communicate with those people. So what means or what are the tools to get them up to date with what you're saying?
Yeah, great question. I am assuming that there are, that's why we have servants preparatory classes, إعداد خدام, and so on and so forth. And servants preparatory classes are not just to teach the content of what you should deliver. They should also teach the method by which they deliver the content. You see, and it's important to have some kind of communication classes, how to relate to children classes, and so on and so forth. Are there resources online? Yes, there are, and I'll be more than happy to share with you some that servants can utilize. Yeah, but that's part of being prepared as a servant, is to serve not just with the material, but how to deliver. Because information is everywhere. You can go to Google and get all the information you want. What's so unique about this particular servant is how he or she connects with the child. How do they connect? Not so much with the knowledge, with how they deliver this knowledge. I remember when I was in Egypt, a little kid in my church, what I remember most about my Sunday school servant or teacher is not the lesson. It's how he dealt with me, how he visited me, how he asked about me. Not so much a beautiful lesson that I heard. فاهم قصدي? Okay. All right. Okay, so let's move. Oh, sure. Yes, تفضلي.
How much information is good enough, how much knowledge is good enough, and this verse saying لأن في كثرة الحكمة كثرة الغم والذي يزيد علما يزيد حزنا.
Excellent, beautiful. I'm so glad you asked this question. There are two verses. Thank you. There are two verses that may seem to be contradictory. كثرة العلم أو من ازداد علما ازداد غما. Okay, those who have more knowledge will have more misery. But there's another verse that seems contradictory that says, my people have perished because of lack of knowledge. هلك شعبي دي في هوشع. هلك شعبي لعدم المعرفة. الله، طب نعرف ولا ما نعرفش؟ انت بتقول اللي هيعرف هيزداد غما، وهلك شعبي لعدم المعرفة. Now what is the answer to this question? The answer is very simple. What kind of knowledge? The knowledge of the truth. If you don't know it, you will perish. The knowledge of falsehood, that will give you the misery and the distress. Why is that? The knowledge of falsehood will do what to you? Will puff you up. And that's what St. Paul said. Knowledge puffs up. Al-ilm yanfukh. Why? Because you know knowledge not of the truth. You know knowledge of secular knowledge that you use to flex your muscles. But that's not the knowledge we're seeking. We're seeking the knowledge of the truth. The knowledge of the truth, the knowledge of God, doesn't puff up. It humbles you. And it saves you. And that's what Hosea, that's what was meant by the verse in Hosea. Does that make sense? Ma'am, does that make sense? Okay. So it's what kind of knowledge? All right, let me move, to completely shift gears to a subject that Abuna asked me to speak about. And I think it's very important and very relevant. And مش هطول عليكم. I'll make it concise as much as possible. How to protect our kids, and I don't have this on the screen, so I'm just going to shut this down. How to protect our kids from our over-sexualized culture. And I will give you also some practical tips. They're not very different from the tips or the principles I shared with you. But needless to say that we live in a culture that is over-sexualized. Anyone disagrees with that? The culture is saturated with a view of sex that is very different from the Christian view. And I'm not sure if we should have little kids here, but anyways, it's okay if parents don't mind. But I want to talk transparently with you, so I'll leave it up to your parents' discretion if you want to have your kids here, but I suggest not. Anyways, so this twisted, perverse, over-sexualized culture obviously have, this culture has an influence on our children. What do we do with this? I'll give you some results, but I'm not going to share with you the statistics. I don't want to depress you, but I'll give you some results. The pornography, the widespread of pornography, sexually transmitted disease, teen pregnancy, violence against women, sexual abuse of children, abortion for casual reasons, traditional family values have been extinct, same-sex marriage, transgenderism, sex trafficking. All of these problems stem from what? A twisted, deviant view of sexuality. All of these. And do you think these are real problems? This is basically a blueprint of what this culture, the Western culture, is all about. You just have to watch the news for 5 minutes and you'll see exactly what I'm mentioning to you. Anyone would disagree with that? This is the world we live in. Well, what do we do as Christians trying to protect our children? First of all, I think this stems from what I call an anthropological shift. An anthropological shift. What do I mean by that? I mean that what it means to be human is now different in the eyes of our secular world. What it means to be human in the past, human was a spiritual being seeking spiritual answers, such as, where did I come from? Who am I? What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? Where am I going when I die? These are metaphysical questions, supernatural questions, spiritual questions. Nowadays, I am no longer a spiritual being. I am now a sexual being. I identify as a man, a woman, and actually a lot of other things too. It's an anthropological shift of what it means to be human. Today, people are seen as fundamentally sexual creatures, not metaphysical ones. Because your sexual identity has become your identity. Your sexual identity has become your identity. I identify myself with my sexual orientation. That's basically who I am. Homosexuality is not something I do. Homosexuality is something I am. You see the difference? It is not something I practice. It is now my identity. I identify as such. So because of this shift, you see this, the transgenderism has been very prevalent in our culture, the LGBTQ movement and all of that, and so on and so forth. So what do we do? I'll give you some principles. برضو زي ما قلنا احنا مش عايزين نتكلم في حاجات نظرية, theoretical. Let's move to the practical. First of all, we need to avoid two extremes. avoiding two extremes. What are these two extremes? One extreme that says, and they're both, by the way, very destructive, these two extremes. One extreme will say, sex is the most important thing in life. It's the goal of almost everything I do, how I dress, how I act, how I carry myself, how I present myself in front of other people, and I need to indulge in this behavior with no limits. That's one extreme. The other extreme, opposite yet equally destructive, that says sexuality is a secret thing, is a shameful thing, it's a dirty thing, it's bad, it's ugly, and it's this, and that. And it should not be discussed in public or even in private. It's just basically shameful and dirty. That's another extreme. Both extremes, as I said, are destructive. Now, of course, the culture that we grew up in will have an influence on how we view sexuality. Is it that extreme or is it this extreme? The Christian position is neither extremes. Sex is not everything in life, and sex is not shameful and dirty. Does that make sense? Does it resonate? Okay. So, I'll give you, and I'll be quick, don't think it's going to take too long, 12 principles. I'll make it quick. 12 principles and strategies. Some of them are overlapping with what we said. To keep in mind, how do I deal with my child to protect them, inoculate them? Hi, Sarah. Against this over-sexualized culture. Number one, build a relationship. Building a relationship is extremely important. What do I mean by building a relationship with my son or daughter? What do I mean by that? How do I practically build a relationship? How do I do that? You know how? When you speak their language. And I don't mean English or Arabic. No, you speak their language. You enter into their world. You get moved by what they are moved by. You get touched by what touches them. You speak their language. Sometimes we as parents and servants, parents in general, we always speak kind of down to our children. This is all meaningless, this doesn't make any sense, or this is insignificant, you don't know what you're doing and all of that. Even if you don't say it, but our body language says it. But if we enter into their world, ask them about their friends, their day, the things which to us may seem insignificant, to them it's very significant. That's how you build a relationship with your son and daughter. Begin by finding out their current needs, their interests, their passions. Talk and listen to them. All right, number two, building a relationship is foundational to everything with my child. Number two, focus on traits, character traits that are far more important than not. Character traits. Yani tie your discussion about sex to bigger issues such as honesty, holiness, purity, self-control. These are far more foundational than just to say لا الفستان ده مش كويس، لا اللي انت بتعمله ده مش كويس. These characteristics or character traits rather are far more important than to look at the symptoms. Because if I understand holiness, self-control, honesty and purity, I will act accordingly. فاهمين قصدي؟ Don't fix just the symptoms. Fix the root cause. Foundationally focus on character traits. Because if you're honest, you'll be more likely, if you're not honest rather, you'll be more likely to lie about your, sexual activities or things like that. And if respect is absent from your life, then sex will become more like a bargaining tool for you. So respect, honesty, loyalty, purity, and holiness are important. Number three, you yourself model a godly view of sexuality. You must model a godly view of sexuality. So teach them that sex is part of God's plan. This is how God created us, how it's gratifying and satisfying when we use it in the right, basically the right way God designed it. And I usually use this example with the youth. I say sexuality in general, sex is like fire, okay? But you have to use it within the right context. Let's say you're cold on a cold night here in Calgary, and you have a fireplace, and you turn on the fireplace, and the fire is in the fireplace. What will it give you? Warmth, good feeling, good vibes. مش كده? Now take that fire outside the fireplace. What will happen? Your house will burn down. I said that's precisely sex. Within the context of marriage, you'll get this warmth because it was meant to be used within this framework. Take it outside of this context and your house will burn down. Every gift that is given to us must be used within a framework and context for this gift to be edifying for you. Every gift, even the gift of whatever gift that is, music, singing, art, whatever that gift, it has to be done within context. So, model a godly view of sexuality yourself. Number 4, that's an important one. Number 4, reflect on your own attitudes about sex. Do you feel inhibited when this subject comes up, or do you feel like you're awkward? It's uncomfortable to talk about this subject because I'm not used to talking about this. In Egypt, I remember in Egypt, we didn't talk about this. ما فيش حاجة اسمها sex education في مصر, at least from when I was in Egypt. I'm not sure if there is now. But we don't even talk about this subject. It's bad. Well, it's not bad, but it's not widely discussed. So reflect on your own attitude. Acknowledge, you as a parent, acknowledge misconceptions about sexuality and aim to resolve them, or at least work around them. Because you can't give that which you don't have. فاقد الشيء لا يعطيه. So if you as a parent, you have misconceptions, bad attitudes, wrong ideas about sexuality, you need to resolve that first for you to be able to communicate with your child. Number 5, talk honestly and frequently. Talk honestly and frequently. Do not tell your child everything you know about sexuality during one single session. I'll give you everything you need to know. That doesn't work. Grow, as I said earlier, grow with your child. Every stage has its own content that you need to share with your child. Now you're going to ask me this question. What do I say when? I will give you the answer to this question as a link to a website that will tell you. If your child is between the ages of, let's say, 5 and 7, this is what you say. If they're between 7 and 12, this is what you say. 12 and 15, that's what you say. After 15, I think they got it. After 15. They'll tell you what you need to know. But anyways, so every stage has its own information and material that you need to share with your child. And this information, there are a couple of articles. I've written a couple, and I have a reference to a couple that I would love to share with you. How do I do that, Abuna? Do I share it with you and then you can send it to everyone? Does that work? Okay. So I'll send these references to Abuna, and Abuna will share with everyone. Because you want to say too much too early. Although, things nowadays, kids nowadays are exposed to a lot of things that I wasn't exposed to when I was their age. But anyways, so you need to know exactly what to say, when to say it. So talk honestly and frequently. Because if you don't, guess what? They will learn from the media, their friends, from society in general, from movies they watch. They will learn about sexuality from these sources. Do you want them to know about sex from these sources? No. So talk honestly and frequently to them. Number 6, We discussed that already. Admit ignorance. So we'll skip that because we said that saying I don't know is not a sign of ignorance. But if you get asked a question about sexuality and you don't know the answer, don't say anything. Just say I don't know. We'll find out. Number 7, parenting 101 for number 7. Believe in your child. Your child will reflect your attitude or your conception of who they are. It will reflect upon them. If you believe in them, if you believe they can manage them, themselves in difficult situations, and you infuse them with this confidence, they will most likely do so. But if you say, I don't trust you. As a matter of fact, here's what I hear all the time. Habibti, I trust you, but I don't trust the people that you're with. I hear this all the time. I trust you, but I don't trust the place you're going to. Why don't we just say, I trust you, and put a full stop? Because the more you say, I trust you. By the way, this is how I remember vividly. My dad used to always say, I trust you're going to do the right thing. And when I'm faced with a temptation to do the wrong thing, by the way, in Egypt when I was a little kid, the wrong thing is to stay at church later than 9 p.m. حاجة زي كده. المهم, if I am tempted to stay the wrong thing, I remember the words of my father. I trust you're going to do the right thing. That was like a heavy weight upon me that drives me to do the right thing. So infuse confidence in your child. They need this confidence, and you need to infuse this confidence in them. You know why? College years. They're not going to be with you anymore. They'll be autonomous. They can do whatever they want to do. So if you don't train them with confidence, self-control, and self-discipline in their younger years, you've lost them in their adult years. You believing in them will help them believe in themselves. Number 8, be inviting. Urge your child to ask anything, anytime, and thank them when they do. Don't ever say, remember the overreact principle? Don't ever say, that we don't talk about this subject. We do talk about this subject. Nowadays, if they don't ask you, you should ask them. Unkush them. If that makes any sense. Mix, okay? Unkushhum. Ask them question. Throw them a little question and see what they say. They'll probably be shocked that mom and dad are talking to me about this stuff, and they will be embarrassed. It's okay. Be inviting. Foster an open and free environment where they can ask anything. And tell them no topic is off limits, or no topic is too embarrassing to discuss. Questions, مثلا, we can say practical questions. So, what do you think the definition of love is? Just a quick question. عشان نشوف what they believe in. What is love? Does love equal, this and that, or what is the definition of love? Number 9, look for teaching opportunities and use them. Look for teaching opportunities and use them. For example, احنا عندنا in the United States, and I'm sure it's the same with you guys in Canada, we have very provocative commercials. يعني back in the days our commercials كانوا يعني conservative وكويسين. دلوقتي all commercials are very provocative. In the middle of a nice movie, good family, good movie, هتلاقي فيه commercials two dads, and even just recently, if you watch any commercials for Hilton or for any of the hotel chains, you'll see either two moms or two dads. You'll see a transgender that's coming out and being celebrated and promoted. You'll see sex scenes here and there, even in commercials, a lot of that. So use these commercials, provocative commercials, as teaching opportunities. What do you think about that, what we just saw? Of course it's awkward, I can understand that. But it's important because they are exposed to these things. They don't have to search for them, believe me. They don't have to go far. It comes to them. Yeah, I can just drive on the freeway and you see a billboard with suggestive scenes or suggestive comments and things of that nature. So look for teaching opportunities. Anything that's provocative or graphic, it's good to use as a teaching opportunity. Number 10, we discussed it already. Do not overreact. So we'll skip that. Number 11, that's an extremely, extremely important point. Number 11, teach your child about friendships and boundaries. The very important concept here, boundaries. Boundaries are so important to teach and infuse in my child. What do I mean by boundaries? Boundaries do two things. What are these two things? One of them is very intuitive. Boundaries do what? Boundaries do what? Protection. Excellent. Boundaries protect. But boundaries do something else even more important. They define. Let me explain. Let's say you have a house, and this house is fenced. There's a boundary here. This fence acts as a boundary. This fence does what to this house? It protects it from intruders, animals or people. You can't cross this fence. But what does this fence also say? It tells me where the house begins, where the house ends. And that's what boundaries do. They define where I begin, where you end. Where you begin and where I end. Every relationship must have boundaries. And there are books that were written on boundaries that are extremely important and useful. Even with your friends, even with family members, servants, every single relationship must have boundaries. This is where I end, this is where you begin. You can't cross this boundary. Because nowadays, I see with my own eyes that boundaries are just not there. I can be open to whoever and enter into the heart of whoever, and whoever can enter into the heart of my heart, and so on and so forth. It's very important to teach our children to have boundaries, not just physical boundaries, but boundaries around my soul. Number 12, and the last suggestion, which I think it goes without saying, love your child unconditionally. Because it's that love that they will hold on to be able to practice all these truths that we just mentioned. Love your child unconditionally and shower them with love. Shower them with love. This is what they need from you the most. I'll tell you a situation that happened, but I hope kids don't hear this. So one of the mothers, a couple of months back, she told me, I was very upset at my daughter the other day. Why? She goes, for the first time, she raised her voice and disrespected me. So I paused. And she said, I couldn't sleep. And that's kind of the worst thing ever. That my daughter disrespected me and she raised my voice. And of course, if you know, in our Middle Eastern Egyptian culture, respect مهم جدا. I'm not saying it's not. It is important. But I want you as parents to just step back and think for a moment. I asked her, how old is your daughter? She said 17. I said, do you know what your daughter is going through in that stage in her life? Do you even have an idea of what she's going through? Why don't you understand that she's going through, مش عاوز أقول, bad words, but she's going through difficult times. Identity formation, mood swings. I mean, Dr. Neder, maybe you can help me with that. I have a little bit of background in psychology, but not as much as you do. But they go through a lot in that stage in life. Am I right? At 17? Extreme turmoil. And it's you see the mood swings. One day they'll be very happy. They're like bipolar, schizophrenic. And then one day they'll be very upset. And for no reason. One day they'll do this, one day they'll do that, and they're just confused with so many things. Can you sympathize with her, empathize with her, and just feel for her? Because it's not about you, it's about her. I am not giving your daughter a license to disrespect you. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that it's important for me as a parent to look a little more empathetically to my children and feel for them, appreciate them, and say it's okay. She she raised her voice one night. It's not the end of the world. She's going through difficult times. So what I'm trying to say is, I don't want us just to hold on to this traditional عيب و don't do this والاحترام والحاجات دي كلها. I don't want us just to hold on to that and lose our children. Sometimes we do that. I want us to win our children, even if it's at the expense of me. You see? So if we learn these things as parents and as servants, we're more likely to نحتوي and to protect, win the love of our children. So let's go through these 12 principles very quickly. Number one, I said avoiding the two extremes. We talked about that. Number one, building a relationship, which is very foundational to everything we said. Number two, focus on character traits. Treat the character traits, not just the symptoms. Number three, model a godly view of sexuality yourself. Number four, reflect on your own attitudes and misconceptions and all the bad things you know about sexuality. Fix that first or work around them before you teach your child. Number five, talk honestly and frequently. 6, admit ignorance when you don't know. Number 7, believe in your child to infuse confidence and discipline in them. Number 8, always be inviting and have an open door policy for them to come and ask you anything they want to ask. Number 9, look for teaching opportunities and use them to teach your child lessons, provocative commercials, graphic content, whatever. Number 10, we said that, do not overreact so that they can come and ask you again. Number 11, teach your child about boundaries and how boundaries protect and define. Number 12, love your child unconditionally. Glory and honor be to God forever and ever. Amen. This subject, as I said, could be very vast and expansive, but I just wanted to make it concise for you so that we can digest it and apply it. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Any questions?
Any questions? Yes, sir.
2 in a row.
Now?
2 times in a row.
As much as you want, as many times as you want.
As we are all aware that we come from different backgrounds and our priorities usually are not the same. But we may have one thing in common, which is culture. So my question, of course the parents have a role to do, but how about the church? How can the church help in that regard, whether it is in group settings or one-on-one, and how to handle these things?
Excellent question. Sayyidina Al-Anba Yusuf taught me a very valuable lesson. He said, whenever someone from the church congregation comes up with an idea, say it's a great idea, can you champion that idea? In other words, I love what you're saying because the church does have a role to play, of course. By the way, the church has a role to play, but compared to the role of the parents, how does it compare? Because many parents say, hey, it's not my problem, it's the church, it's the servant, it's the abuna, it's this and that. How much time do they spend at church and how much time do they spend at home? So we know that. So does the church have a role to play? Absolutely. Can someone spearhead that مثلا training, this course, these classes? Someone should. And I stop here. Someone should.
What I meant that I understand that
Can you
the
speak
church
to
has
the
a
mic?
role. The church has a role to play, and I also understand that the main responsibility lies on the parents.
Right.
But what I'm asking, since we are diversified, what would you recommend for the church when they approach or tackle these problems, whether to be in group settings or one-on-one or through confessions or whatever?
All of the above.
Or visitations.
All of the above. There's not one stream of or work stream that will be most effective. All of the above. Here's what I can do. So I'm going to send Abuna two things: references on what to say in what stage in life. The second thing I will send Utsabuna and hold me accountable to that. I will send. We do in our church sex education for kids, okay? Because again, I don't know to what, how early they're exposed to sex education in school here in Calgary, but in California, at very early stage, in grade 3, they're exposed to sexuality. Grade 4, طب كويس, at least في. Okay, so what I can do, I can share with you. I put a PowerPoint for boys, and my wife put a PowerPoint. She's a physician, so she speaks from the biological also perspective. A PowerPoint for girls. I will send both of them to Utsake Utsabuna. I will send you both so that you can use them as references. Having sex education as part of the Sunday school curriculum is important. Having a day seminar like this is important. Have one-on-ones with people that are have psychology background, Dr. Nader or whoever else is here, is important. So all of the above.
Okay, one
تحت أمرك.
side point.
تحت أمرك.
You touched on the parents and also implied that the church is involved in that matter. How about the grandparents? Do they have a role to play?
The role of the parents is the role of the grandparents. The role of the parents is to discipline. The role of the grandparents is to spoil. مش كده? I'm sorry if
Oh,
there's another question right here.
sorry.
Okay, ماشي.
I know it is
After
parents
this question.
setting. That's parents setting, but I would like to surrender my question for this nice girl there.
You are wonderful. God bless you. What's your name? Hi, Monica.
You said that parents have to be able to show empathy to their child. That parents have to be able to show empathy to their child because you don't know what they might be going through. But what if the parent themselves is going through a very stressful situation themselves, and so it's harder for them to show empathy to their kid, and their kid should also be able to show empathy to their parent if they know what their parent is going through.
Wow, how magnanimous and loving of you to ask this question. Seriously. I mean, usually I get the question posed in a different way, but for you asking this question is indicative of the fact that you're just fine. You know what I mean? So it's of course important for the daughter or the son who's 16, 17, 18. It's extremely important for them to be empathetic of their parents. But what's expected is that for the parent to be more empathetic for their children. That is kind of what's expected. Why? Because there's a verse that says, you strong people, أيها الأقوياء احتملوا ضعف الضعفاء. Do you know what that means? You speak Arabic? Okay. You strong people put up with the weakness of the weak. So in this relationship, usually, I'm just generalizing, in this relationship between a mother and a daughter, usually the strong of the two is the mother, and the weaker is the daughter. So the mother ought to extend that, extra empathy to her daughter. But if the daughter is as wonderful as what you just asked, then that would be wonderful and awesome. It works both ways. Yeah. Wonderful question. So thank you for surrendering that question to her. Any other comments or questions? Yes, ma'am. Do you have? Here you go.
It's just a personal question. How do we just talk with our child we just grew up into different cultures. We don't talk about sex when back home. But now when the kids come and ask us a question, I'm not comfortable, even though I'm a nurse, I'm not comfortable to talk with my son. Sometimes I have to ask the question to my husband. So how do we be comfortable with our own child to talk about these things openly? How do we pass that discomfort so that we'll be able to talk about it openly with our kids?
That's a good, honest, genuine question. Sometimes if you're not comfortable, you ask yourself, why? I mean, we need to understand as Christians that this gift is God's gift to us. It is not dirty, it's not shameful, it's not sinful. You see what I'm saying? So we need to kind of change our conception of sex. So something we need to work on. But even if you do that, you're still uncomfortable, then there are other people that can talk to your child. However, I don't recommend that. Because whatever they learn from you, usually the dad talks to the son and the mother talks to the daughter. That's how usually it works. Yani, because you don't want to talk to your son about sexuality and vice versa. فاهم قصدي? Do you see what I'm saying? So first of all, ask yourself, why do I have these misconceptions? Number two, if you still are uncomfortable, then find someone else to talk to them about it. Preferably of the same gender. You see? Someone like a servant in church, abuna, anyone like that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I would like to ask a question about our attitude toward media, especially the kids' movie nowadays is really different. Sometimes I take an aggressive actions. Like 2 years ago, I canceled my subscription Netflix. Last month, I canceled Disney, and my son asked, okay, so...
Oh, really? Oh, no. And I was like, wow, you did the exact same thing Abuna did. I didn't know that you're... I was like, wow, you live in the same house. Okay.
Yes. So my son's 9 years said, Mom, what about if there is only like one bad thing? Can we watch the movie? What we gonna watch after? So I know it's endless, but what we should do?
Yeah, it's a struggle. I feel for you. It's a struggle because you don't want to live, you don't want to raise your child in a bubble because they're going to eventually be exposed to the world. I would much rather than be exposed to all this ugliness under my watch rather than being exposed when I'm not with them. I know it is difficult as a parent to expose my child to these things, but you know what? That's the world we live in. As a matter of fact, I always like to say this expression: inoculate, do not isolate. Yani, vaccinate against all of this, explain, talk to them, and say, I was just talking to Abram, I'm not sure if Abram is still here. It's not, okay. I was just talking to Abram about how, his daughter is 3 years old, and she's being introduced to now parent one, parent two, two moms, two dads, and all of that. And how do we deal with that? Well, explain what God's design is. This is God's design. And what is the result if I were to walk in this design? Peace, joy, meaningfulness, all of that. And the deviation of God's design is that. So you can say, I am going to expose you to this so that you know what not to do. فاهم قصدي؟ You want to what?
I don't want to pay money for Disney. What should I do? It's me, like I explained to my son, but I'm still angry because
you don't have to pay money. You don't have to go to Disney or Netflix. You can just watch TV in general and you'll find commercials or any show now is...
He said, now you're canceling everything.
Hatta even the ratings, I don't know, you guys have the same ratings, PG, R, وكذا. Even PG 20 years ago is not the same PG now. So, again, it's the world we live in. But you know what? Again, I will tell you, it's through the grace of God that you raise your child and protect him or her in this environment. Is it doable? Yes, it is. The role of, that's why we're here tonight. The role of the parent in this day and age is not a walk in the park. It's not as easy as it was years and years ago. If you're not ready to parent, think again. It is important for you to understand the responsibility as a parent. As a matter of fact, you discipline yourself to discipline your child. And some parents usually parent by intuition. You know what I mean? يعني إيه, if this action X happens, then reaction Y will happen. Intuition. No. You need to process and think and educate yourself. As I told you, Focus on the Family that I shared with you earlier has so many resources on how to parent, in what situations, what to say, what not to say, how to protect our children. Extremely important in this day and age. وربنا يحافظ على أولاده. That's all thing I could say, because it's a tough time. I'm a parent and I understand what's going on with our children nowadays. Yes, تفضلي.
Okay. How do you respond to the peer pressure about homosexuality? So let's say they identify nicely what's right and wrong based on the Bible, and they can defend that to themselves. But when they are questioned by others, or actually judged badly, that they are homophobic or discriminatory, all the bad things, what do they have to do, or what do we have to do with them, so that on social media, oh, I have to follow this or accept this so I don't appear as homo, or she blocked me because of this. I have to show that I am at least tolerant. Yeah, I am not like them, but I have to support them. Like all those gray zone.
Yeah, I was hoping no one will ask this question, because that's do you guys have 2 hours to spare? Because this topic of homosexuality is a very not only important, but it's very vast. I will try to summarize very briefly. Okay, عشان خاطر الوقت برضو. And as you know, I live in San Francisco, and San Francisco is known for, I'm not sure if you're aware, but it's the culprit of homosexuality and transgenderism and all that. And my children are very exposed to this in elementary school, middle school, and high school. Anyways, to make a long story short, let me ask you a couple of questions. Is homosexuality like any other sin? It's a very important question. Yes or no? Some say yes, one says no. It's a trick question. It's yes and no. It's yes and no. Let me explain. Because it's important to understand, and then I will answer your question on what to do practically when you get bullied because you say, I reject that kind of behavior. I'll get to your question in a minute. Homosexuality is just like any other sin as it pertains to God. Because a sin is a sin, whether you have homosexual behavior or even heterosexual infidelity. It's the same thing. Sin is a sin. But homosexuality is not like any other sin when it pertains to our reaction to it. For example, have you ever seen, do you guys have pride parades here? حلو قوي. مش حلو قوي, I mean good. Because we have them. Actually June was Pride Month. برضو في Pride Month هنا. هو كل حاجة حلو خالص. Now, have you ever seen cheating parade? Dishonesty parade? Have you ever seen any of those? No. And that's how homosexuality is different from all other sins. Because society is trying to not only normalize it, but promote it. And not only promote it, but celebrate it. You see? Have you ever seen a society that celebrates, like I said, corruption or dishonesty or anything like that? No. That's why when you say to that which is sinful, or when you look at sin from, when you say, what is the verse that says, woe to those who call good bad and bad good? There's a verse in the scriptures that say that. So that's number one point I wanted to make. To your question, let's think logically. Everyone now promotes tolerance. مش كده؟ Tolerance. What is tolerance, traditionally speaking, and what is tolerance according to our culture? Traditionally and biblically speaking, tolerance means this: I tolerate you, I love you, I accept you, but I do not tolerate, nor accept, nor love what you do. There's a difference between who you are and what you do. That's the biblical definition of tolerance. Our culture's definition of tolerance is what? I accept not only you, but everything you do. Because what you do is just equally valid as what I do. So there's no distinction between, again, between what? Who I am and what I do. Can I even get a little deeper? Philosophically speaking, there is a difference between Christianity and an ideology called existentialism, اللي هو مذهب الوجودية. Our culture here in the West adheres to existentialism, which means what I do defines who I am. فاهم قصدي؟ What I do defines who I am. That's secularism and existentialism. Existence precedes essence. Christianity says who I am determines what I am capable of doing. You see how it's vastly different? So, because of that, when you meet someone for the first time, what do you say? Hey, so what do you do? Because what you do defines who you are. Oh, you're an engineer. That's who you are. You're a doctor. You're an accountant. You see? But that's not Christianity. So what I need to understand and help my child or whoever is getting bullied understand is that there's a difference between tolerating people and tolerating what they do. We need to make that distinction. And let me take it a step further. Those who advocate tolerance, what are they advocating? To tolerate everything and everyone. Now let me ask you, why can't you then tolerate my intolerance? You see how it's not logically coherent concept. And I'll tell you a story. I worked in San Francisco for 12 years or so, right in front of City Hall. And back in 2007, 2008, when they legalized same-sex marriage and all that in San Francisco. And there was a lot of same-sex marriages in City Hall. And from my office, I could see all the wedding, going on, the ceremonies and all that. And the lawn in front of City Hall were some Christians holding a sign that sign says, we love you, but don't love what you do. God loves the sinner, but hates the sin. Some just peaceful, not protest, just peaceful signs from some Christians in the lawn across the City Hall. So what happens? What did I see? I saw very angry, aggressive, same-sex marriage couples yelling, screaming, cursing at those standing at the lawn saying, God loves you but hates the sinner, and some verses from the Bible. And I questioned myself and I said, wait a minute. You are advocating tolerance and acceptance by everyone in society. Why are you then being intolerant, unaccepting of my unacceptance and intolerance? We're not judging them, we're judging what they do. But this is how we need to explain to. So what we need to do is to explain the difference between who they are and what they do. And that's fundamental to this argument. I'm not what I do. What I do doesn't define who I am. So let's say you committed a mistake or a sin. Khalas, you've been labeled as such. You're a cheater, you're a sinner, you're this or that. Absolutely not. You just made a mistake, you sinned, and this doesn't define who you are. And you can give them examples. And let me tell you something else. Biblically speaking, and this is what the youth say, we shouldn't judge. Matthew 7:1 is the most commonly used verse in the scriptures. What does Matthew 7:1 say? Do not judge, lest you be judged. لا تدينوا لكي لا تدانوا. But do you know that there's another verse in John 14? John 7. In John 7, I believe, or 14, that says, judge with righteous judgment. That's the Lord Jesus Christ speaking. Judge with righteous judgment. But wait a minute, Jesus, are you confusing me? Should I judge or not judge? And that's the important issue. I judge what you do. We all judge what we do. We cannot live without judgment. And for an atheist, بلاش حتى Christian, for an atheist, they live their life with judgment. They judge which stock I should invest in. They judge which bank I should put my money in. They judge which doctor I should go to. This is judgment. So our life is filled with judging, things and behavior. But what I shouldn't do is to judge people, because there's only one judge who judges them. Who am I to judge you? But I am called to judge what you do. Because you as an atheist judge what I do. Why are you then forbidding me to do to you what you do to me? It's very simple. Okay, any other comments or questions? Yes, ma'am. 1 second.
So because now the pride thing is everywhere, so for example, if they have an event at school and they are requested to be involved, wear the same t-shirts or do anything. Now if they say no, they will be discriminative. And then if they say yes, they are doing something against their will.
Okay, this is, I wish I can give you a one-size-fits-all answer. There's, unfortunately, it's not a black or white kind of thing, because you must do that which is right, but you have to do it with wisdom. But I will give you general answer to the question. I don't know the specifics of that situation. For me to give you a specific answer, I need to ask more questions about the school and the repercussions if you do this, and the friends and all of that. So I'm just going to give you a general answer. We need to teach our children to stand firm in what they believe in. There's no negotiation. Stand firm in your convictions. Because if you say one time, معلش يعني ايه يعني كلهم لبسوا rainbow flag, يعني ايه جت على rainbow flag, if you allow this once, you've lost a lot of things in the future. Then the child is going to grow up with ايه يعني طب مش لازم اصوم 4 جمعة، طب ايه يعني مش لازم اعمل كده، طب ايه يعني مش لازم، طب ما ربنا بتاع المسيحيين وبتاع المسلمين. They will begin thinking this way. So teach your child to stand firm in what they believe in. They will be ridiculed, so be it. They will be made fun of, so be it. Now this is when wisdom comes into play. Talking with them, building a relationship with them. Why are they mocking you? Why are they ridiculing you? And you explain to them, this is God's design, and that's the end result. When you deviate from God's design, that's the end result. We are not of this world, something we all need to teach our children. It doesn't mean that we need to be odd and weird. We're just different because we have a different world that we belong to. St. Paul says our citizenship is in heaven. So we need to teach this to our children. We're different. We're not weird, we're different. So forgive me to say this, but there is no alternative. Someone raised their hand? Yes, Sarah?
We're seeing a lot of kids not have a sense of urgency when it comes to understanding the nature of these sins. So by that I mean they'll compartmentalize. They go to church, they like tasbihah, they're good to go, but you talk about LGBTQ or the transgender or abortion or any of these kind of hot button topics, and it's I don't really agree with the church, but that's not a big deal. And it's difficult to get them to understand kind of that disaster level of these sins.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions?
I do, and I'll tell you why they say that. Because we sometimes take the other extreme. Can I just be transparent with you? Can I be open with you? محدش يزعل مني. Okay? And I'll make a statement I will probably regret later. Most Egyptians, and I'm Egyptian, فاهم قصدي؟ بقول most Egyptians are homophobic. دي قاعدة بقى، ممكن يعني بقول لكم بكل صراحة. Okay? حد زعل مني؟ Emphasize؟ لا. ليه؟ احنا متربيين ان homosexuality دي the greatest sin of all. The greatest sin of all. يعني مش عاوز اخش في details معلش سامحني بس this is how we grew up. Sometimes the youth say these things because of the reaction of the church saying, oh, they're all going to go to hell, this is مش عارف ايه, this is مش عارف ايه, this is مش عارف ايه. And that's also wrong. We as Christians, forget Egyptians or Americans or Canadians, we as Christians have some work to do to extend love towards homosexuals. Love towards homosexuals, not homosexuality. فاهمة قصدي? There is work that we need to do and not to be quick to say they're all going to hell. When I am a youth and I hear my dad or my servant say, oh, this is the worst sin of all because this sin you sin to your body and look what happened when St. Paul in Romans 1 said this and what do you think they're going to say? The church is fanatic, is judgmental, is bigots, and it's extreme. فاهمة قصدي Sarah? So we need to be balanced and not to be aggressively judging everyone that practice homosexuality. I need to talk with reason, with balance, and say this sin is destructive to you and to the culture around you, and explain why same-sex marriage is destructive to our civilization. And when they come back and say what happens in the bedroom, that's their problem, their issues, who am I to say who should marry who? You have a say. Because it's your culture, it's your society, it's your civilization. Why does government have anything to do with same-sex marriage? Because marriage as a unit is the foundation of civilization. That's why government is involved. I ought to be involved as well. So when you speak to them intellectually, without emotions, without aggression and judging, I think they'll get it. At least that's my experience. I hope that answers your question. Yes?
Sorry. It's a question, it's not real. It's just sometimes I think about or imagine because you mentioned that we need to show love. Sometimes I feel bad for so many kids because even like in Canadian or American, they live in very hard culture. So if you would like to show love, if someone under this sin or any like very famous sin or whatever, how we can show love in the church. Like I have a friend in Anglican church, I said, does your church like bless homosexuality? She said no, but they are like, for example, with us in choir. So what is our limit in showing love without like compromising our faith?
Beautiful question.
It's not real?
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Sorry.
It's not real, like there is nobody, it's just...
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and that's why His Holiness Pope Shenouda said these words: with every virtue, there must be one virtue that works with all of them, which is wisdom. Exactly, wisdom. I show love with wisdom. Show love, does that mean that I do what they do? If my gay friend is having his marriage with his gay spouse and invites me, do I go? So there's wisdom. I show love, but I still stand firm, because I cannot compromise my belief and my faith. And I expect him or her to respect my conviction just like they expect me to respect their conviction. It works both ways. So I show love, but I also have boundaries. Participating in the choir, what are you basically saying? You're endorsing it. فاهمة قصدي? So there's wisdom that needs to be deployed in these situations. Yeah. I remember, do you all remember the story of the cake and the bakery that went to the Supreme Court in the US? So you remember that story? So what's interesting is that the homosexual couple that wanted to get married, there were bakeries right next to them. But they drove a distance, over an hour and a half distance, to specifically go to a Christian baker to ask them to bake their cake for their wedding. And when the Christian baker said, no, it is against my conviction, they took the case to the Supreme Court. But my question for the same-sex marriage couple, why are you not respecting this baker's conviction just like you expect him to respect your conviction? It seems that there's a subtle attack on Christianity that is going on in the West. We need to teach our children that. Stand firm in what you believe in and do not waver. اوكي انا مش عاوز اطول عليكم، الساعه دلوقتي 8 لا 9 8 عندنا 9 عندكم. ف if you need to leave I won't be offended, just you can get up and leave. I don't want to keep you for too late. Somebody raised their hand. تفضل. So one second.
Can we use the verse, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are...
Excellent verse. Can I read it again?
All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but not all things...
Excellent. كل الأشياء تليق لكن ليس كل الأشياء توافق. That's beautiful verse that would apply for our conversation. I'll pick and choose that which is aligned with my faith. Excellent. Thank you for sharing this verse. Anyone else? Any comments or questions or objections? Yes. Okay.
I have a question about the same-sex attraction. Is it a choice to have a same-sex attraction, or is it a choice to act on the same-sex attraction?
طب ماشي، طب واحدة. لا, it's okay. Yeah. So I have done some study and research on this subject, يعني as much as I could do. And I wish I can share with you on the screen some of those studies. I have like 12 studies that were done from non-Christian sources, non-Christian, that concluded, scientifically speaking, that there is no such a thing as a gay gene. You know what I mean by that? There's no such a thing as a gay gene. I was born this way. However, there are gay tendencies, but not gay genes. Yani, I have inclination, tendencies, maybe because of my upbringing, my environment, my relationship with my dad, my relationship with my mother, and some psychology behind it. But to be born homosexual, there has not been any, from what I've researched and studied extensively, inconclusive. But let me just take it a step further. Even if there is such a thing as gay gene, that would not give me the license to practice homosexuality. Because I may be born with stealing gene. I have inclination to steal. It's in my genetic predisposition. I have inclination to cheat. Does that give me license to steal and cheat? No. So even if there is, that should not allow me to say, I'm born this way. Because I'm born this way is usually the free kind of card that people use to say, it's not my problem, I'm born this way. So does that answer your question? So, and I would love to share with you, maybe that's the third thing I can give you with Sabuna, the research from reputable universities that have done this research on homosexual genetics and predispositions. Oh yeah, you had a question.
Two comments on what you said. If there is somebody who is homosexual coming to the choir and you said, I cannot contain them inside, but actually if I have any youth who have a girlfriend or boyfriend and are practicing sex, I will have them in the choir. So I am actually breaking up my own self because I have double judgment. So that's a question. Second question about the gene. So psychopath people, like narcissists or whoever, there are studies that said, and maybe Dr. Nader as a psychiatrist can correct me, but I think they said that some of it is genetic. So again, sometimes God creates people like that. So what do you say for that?
Yeah, well, the second question, I already answered it. Even if God created people like that, does not give me the license to do that. Because if I know what the truth is and gravitate towards this truth, then God will give me the grace to overcome my genetic predisposition. Or else, God is unfair. ما هو يا تختار يا دي يا دي. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say some of them are untreatable. Then actually I have a lot of examples of those who, and there's a lot of websites of ex-gay websites that are now Christians, ex-homosexuals. Well, do you think ربنا ما خلقش عيوب فينا كلنا؟ هو ربنا خلقنا كلنا كويسين, because that's why in Genesis he said very good, بس العيوب دي من سبب الخطية. طب do you think احنا عشان انا عندي عيوب فيا اللي هي سماها بولس الرسول ايه؟ الانسان العتيق, the old man that is in me. Well, from Romans 7, what does he say about the old man? He says, that which I will to do, I do not do. That which I don't want to do, that I do. في صراع ما بين الإنسان العتيق والإنسان الجديد. It doesn't mean that all I live by is the old man that's in me, the carnal man. Absolutely not. Then, if that is the case, then what Jesus Christ did on the cross is meaningless. فاهم قصدي? I must draw from the grace of God to become a saint, despite all what the old man wants to do in my nature. That's Christianity. If I succumb to it and say, it's the old man and عندي عيوب, ربنا خلقني كده, then I don't understand what Christ did on the cross. Huh? A serial killer, هو مخلوق serial killer? لا, I wouldn't say that. Let me explain. No, I wouldn't say that. I've also studied Ted Bundy, the serial killer بتاع أمريكا. I'll tell you this. There is, and I did study behavioral psychology, and Dr. Nader, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And in behavioral psychology, we have this distinction between nurture and nature. Nurture and nature. I am born with some inclination and these predispositions, but nature يعني الانvironment اللي حواليا, my upbringing, basically my surroundings influenced me to exercise and practice my inclinations. If you listen to all the serial killers, they were not born serial killers. Those who hold guns in schools and do school shootings understand their relationship with their parents, understand their environment, and you'll see that it's their environment, their relationship with their parents that led them to do that. But if I am born with no hope to be a serial killer, then here's what the conclusion would be. God, you're unfair. You see what I'm saying? But we know that God is fair. We know that God gives you, as He gives you the desire to do the bad things, He gives you also the power through the Holy Spirit and the sacraments of the church to overcome these things. And if you read Romans chapter 8 specifically, St. Paul says that لو بالروح نميت أعمال الجسد سنحيا. That's what he said. So if I succumb to أعمال الجسد, then why are we here? You see? So I think we may be discounting the huge power of the grace of God. When you pray and you say, God, I have an inclination to do this bad thing, help me. What do you think is going to happen? The grace of God will help you. So, and I'm speaking from experience, not just words I read. So I think that's important for us to understand. All right, it's now 9:15. We can talk about the homosexuality and all of that for so many more hours, but I think I don't want to overstay my welcome. God willing, next week, Tomorrow, God willing, we will discuss two very important subjects. The first subject is, does God exist? Do we have evidence for His existence outside the Bible? The second subject, which is more important, why am I a Christian? And is there evidence for Christianity? And Dr. Nader, we will discuss the point we talked about earlier. Is there evidence for Christianity outside the scriptures, and for us to be able to discuss these things to our youth? So I hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you for your time and attention, and keep me in your prayers.